Those of you on live campus classes, on campus, whatever it is, Wednesday we are actually going to meet in your little groups or individually and give you feedback on both sections 3 and 4, because I like to do those together. Online, I'm gonna try out the new Blackboard feature of recording video for feedback. We're gonna see how that works. Hopefully it will actually work very well. Normally I try to do Skype interviews, but I know that it is a crazy schedule for everybody these next couple of weeks. So what we are going to do then is the next phase of your project, and as you move into it, and some of you have already thought about it, I know at least one group has already got an appointment scheduled, is you're really going to kind of modify your existing document. So it doesn't take a lot of content modification. So you're really modifying it so a single document, you're ready to present it to the business owner. And so you may get some suggestions from me about, hey, maybe you should change the order of items. Maybe you should change an item completely out. What happens sometimes when we present to a business, if you lead with a high dollar item, they automatically shut down. And so we have some of that when you've taken things like consumer behavior. How do people function? And you need to kind of lead them in this idea of how do I proceed carefully and make recommendations that are appropriate to that business. And the reality is, a lot of businesses, especially smaller businesses, no matter what you present to them, they are going to go, no. Even in the case of this example that we're using where you don't really have a product to sell them. A lot of businesses are very weary or leery of consultants because what is the main thing a consultant does? Yells at them? Well, you can. But the reality is, for most consultants, when you get the initial consulting gig, you want it to become an ongoing gig, right? You'd like to turn that from, a couple $1,000s of revenue into an ongoing revenue stream. So think, for example, of Microsoft turning, you used to be able to buy Microsoft Office individually, and it was still expensive. Now they'd like you to purchase it on an inexpensive monthly or yearly plan. But what it does is turn that into that recurring revenue stream. So in a lot of cases, these same type of consults really lead to, how do I put in new things? And I know that is the end goal of a couple of projects, is how do we put some new pieces in place. And so you have to be careful that they're not thinking, hey, you're trying to hook me for technology A, and it may not really be the best technology for me. So in meeting with your client, you want to be objective, you want to be fair, but there's some psychological strategies, some behavior modification techniques we want to put in place so that you can hopefully achieve this very, very easily, and you can get some positive results. And so part of that is how you word that and how you look at those technologies. Dollars matter. So if you haven't done things like ROI on a project or come up with a way to do something to say, hey, this project is going to generate revenue or it's going to cut costs, and this is why, and this is how, and this is how much. Now, the reality is in your project, you probably don't have access to their books. If you're coming in as a business consultant, you may have to ask some of those leading questions in there when you're presenting that. And you say, well, I can tell you how much time I'll cut out of a person. I don't know what your salary and your benefits, but you can make some use cases or a case about it. You could say, well, I know you have a technician that's making $25 an hour. Just for the sake of argument, when you really look at benefits and everything else, you can essentially double their cost, and you could say, that's $50 an hour, 2,000 hours a year, that's $100,000 for this technician. If you cut that one position out, that's $100,000. Maybe you can afford a new phone system. And you want to be upfront about conversion costs and things, because the reality is conversions and things are painful. It is painful to make change, and people are reluctant to make change, but you need to make that argument for, why am I making that change? What is the benefit of that change? Is it going to increase sales? Am I going to increase my viewership if you're working on a website development plan of some sort? Am I going to get more customers dragged to that website? What is the best place in there? And quite frankly, in a lot of cases, what you really are going to do is you motivate them to change their existing technology. So you'll probably do those small incremental things are what you're going to sell them. Large-scale projects, maybe you'll get them thinking about it, but usually they're not going to bite off on a very large project immediately. They're going to have to think about it. Probably they're going to want to pull some numbers, and so you'll leave them with enough documentation that they can do that. But it's not about that one-time offer. A lot of times you'll want to go back in a couple of days and say, I know I presented you with a lot of information. Can I meet with you in a couple of days and we can just go over and find some thoughts and ideas about what this presentation meant to you? So we're going to create all this piece to put it into one. Your final goal then, if you look ahead, is we're going to push this out to that client. And then that client, you're going to wrap that feedback from that client into this presentation. So when you prepare this document, think about professionalism. Think about making sure that this looks applicable to your client. Things like typos. Typo in the cover page. And I will tell you, having hired people and done these kinds of things, a typo on that first page or a typo on the first page of your resume, what does that immediately set a signal of? If you can't be bothered to make a typo-free page, do I want to take those recommendations from you? Or if you're using incorrect grammar, for example. Those kinds of things really do matter in that final project. How you present this is truly important. So make this APA format, but as user-friendly towards that eventual client, because that's who your goal is. Yes, you're sending it to me, and yes, I'm giving you a grade. The reality is you're eventually going to send this to the client or the person or the business you're working with. So let's think about how we're going to do that piece. So I know it's a busy week for everybody. We're getting near finals. I know it seems strange to say that, but we've only got 3 weeks of school left. It seems like a couple of weeks ago we were starting class, and the semesters go by very, very quickly. So originally I had a really great video, and for whatever reason it decided, last week I had problems with this cheap program I use, which I probably should find an alternative. It decided to dump the video out. I had audio. Guess what my video I tried to create over the weekend did? Video, but no audio. Just has a constant hiss through it. So it's really great. I love that. So what I did to give you guys a beginning through this, because I know you've all diligently read ahead over the weekend in your spare time, right? And that's where everybody's eyes light up and they say, well, sure, there is nothing I like doing better on a Friday night than reading through a systems analysis book, right? Yeah. And you guys all need rubber boots if we're actually going to say that on a Friday night. So I have included from the author a set of videos that goes through about everything actually in this chapter for you. So you don't have to listen to me talk about it. You don't have to even look at the PowerPoint because he goes through every bit of the PowerPoint in it. And they're nice and short. They're about 5 minutes apiece. The only thing I will say, and maybe it's just my perception, the guy's voice will instantly put me into a coma if I'm already sleepy. So, nothing against him. He's a very smart guy, obviously. But 2 uses for it. 1, you can learn a lot of content. 2, if it's 3 in the morning like it was last night when I'm sitting there, I can go, hey, let's put on a video, and it'll be instantly out. So, those are a couple of the things in there. So, really what we're looking at this week is we're kind of looking at that final piece of object-oriented programming and how we're going to take that and put it into our coding structure, how we're going to separate things like view layers So make sure you look through there. It really won't kill you, and they're actually a really nice touch. That said, I'm probably going to change textbooks next year just simply due to some new material that I think I found that is actually better. So I'm not telling the bookstore yet, which we have actually changed. So there is a horrible discussion board this week. I know. And this one, we're going to probably do in class today. I know. And if I had a webcam, I would show you one of my newest toys. So if you were in cybersecurity class, you'd have seen this already. This is called a pineapple. And these guys have been around for a few years. And if I pass this little guy around, it looks kind of like, hey, it might be like a Wi-Fi adapter. And it is. But it looks a little weird. And why does it have this Y cable so it can pull more power off a USB than a standard? What is that about? Why do I need both pieces there? A Wi-Fi pineapple. So if you look at this, I played around the other day. So we'll talk a little bit about security and some other issues. So the other day, it is a great tool. And so the cybersecurity class, we played with it a little bit, and they got to see part of it. It allows me to set up either an evil twin or what's called a man-in-the-middle attack. There's some subtle differences, but what it actually does is I use my laptop. I connect to a Wi-Fi network like, say, GoBlue. I'm cloning out what GoBlue looks like out and pushing it out via the pineapple. And that actually is a small Linux computer actually inside of it. And it's got some memory and it's got a space for a flash card. You're logging then into a network. You look at your computer and you go, hey, it says GoBlue. That looks like it might be the right network, right? But you're actually connecting through the Pineapple and Me. Now what that does then is all of your traffic that you thought was encrypted and safe, I have in clear text. Where can I see those kinds of things? Go to an airport. Look around. Does everything look like it really should? And those things are pretty expensive, aren't they? I think you guys already looked it up. How much is it? Shopping for them. Yeah. Yeah. So this guy online from Hack5 is 99 bucks. So you could purchase one of these on your own. Now you can do the same thing actually with a external card, so you had two Wi-Fi connections on your own computer. You can do something very similar. This just packages it and makes it really easy to use.
With this, could you actually connect this GoBlue like right now and have
Yeah.
nothing you need to do?
I mean, there is some setup. Yeah, it's not literally I just plug it into a laptop and it magically works. But
Over the entire campus or just this building?
just as far as you can reach this. So essentially what you're forcing the computer to do, like your laptop, is I want to push out a stronger signal. So your computer is trying to find on and log into the strongest signal. And so if I'm that strongest signal, so I'm sitting next to you with my laptop in a bag at the airport, and you guys are 20 feet away and the wireless access point's 50, 100 feet away, I'm able to grab that. And so one of the tools I put on here, and there's a lot of user-created and other tools, is a tool called DWAL. And so DWAL allows me to run essentially a website off of this guy or off my laptop that I can then push up on the screen, and I can show people then as they're logging in, and it's showing their credentials, their login credentials, passwords, usernames, banking account information. That's $100. Now, I actually have another version of this but it's bigger, and I don't find it quite as handy, honestly. So I've got one called a Tetra, but the Tetra is quite a bit bigger, more powerful, does some other things, but it's not as easy to tuck inside that little tiny laptop bag as this guy. So I'm not saying I hang out at airports and do this. Don't judge me. This is a form of people watching. So I actually did a little experiment the other day, and I did not get IRB approval, so we can't go out these walls with it. So I just did this in our class just to see what, and the people in the class knew what was going on. And in fact, to make sure that nobody was a meringue, for lack of a better term, I actually changed the name of what this pushed out. I called it Fake Go Blue. I actually had a couple of students log in through Fake Go Blue. I'm like, wait, really? And I know they were setting out around the corner, and I did not steal any of their stuff. I just let it pass through, and I went. But I wanted to open up the door and just go, holy cow, are you not right in the head? So I'm not even sure what people, if I just put free Wi-Fi on here, free Wi-Fi and free candy maybe, people would actually probably log in and do the same kind of thing. So this is just kind of one of those examples of what's happening out there in the world around us. So we know that Wi-Fi has enough issues. Every time we think we fix something, we come up with new issues. And we have things like WPS that still remains. In other words, you buy that router at Best Buy, or I was going to say I always use Shopko, but I guess I won't be able to use Shopko any longer as a reference. But you buy that router, and it's got on the bottom, it says, push this button, and you'll be able to log in using this pre-printed number that's on the bottom of the router, this WPS pin. And we've shown that we can break that over and over and over again, and guess what manufacturers still ship out? Hey, let's put this in here, really. Because it's protected. It sounds really great. So, the discussion board this week, and what we want to look at is, how has this changed over the last 5 years? So, you're going to need a source at least, and your textbook has some content in it. But the reality is, I think we actually have had some changes in the last 5 years. Companies are starting to now have to hopefully at least start to think about security, IT security, their component security. We no longer have that luxury. So a couple of things that I think have changed is there's starting to get to be some teeth in some of the federal laws. So for example, HIPAA has now started to get a little more aggressive on the medical side about loss of data. So it used to be if you lost data, you had to kind of apologize and say, oh well. Now, they're starting to put some fines in place on top of the, oh my goodness, I'm embarrassed because I lost data. Now the reality though is, especially in these smaller communities, if you lose everybody's hospital data at a hospital, is there probably some ill will in the community? So, how many of you know where Pawnee City is? How many of you have been to their hospital? Nobody? Oh, that's good. Because Pawnee City, I think, lost every patient record they had. Well, and I surmise that because they had to send out a notice to a little over 7,000 patients that they had lost their data. And I'm guessing this hospital the size of Pawnee City, 7,000 patients is probably a good chunk of their patient base. How do we start dealing with what's going on around us? And how do we start doing it from the ground up rather than apologize and go, oops, we made a mistake? And hopefully companies have started changing some of their policies and the way they do business. Let's go back to Target a few years ago. What happened at Target? Credit card breach. So a whole lot of things happened. Do you remember how they got into Target? The HVAC system. Great, James. They actually got in on an HVAC controller, And that's how they were able to cross over into the network. So we talk about that Internet of Things security, and that's kind of that same idea. These devices are out there, they're on the network, and if I can gain remote access to them, I can use that as a jumping point. So hopefully that set a signal that, you know what, we should put these on an isolated network. And in fact, I'm paranoid enough that I've worked at some facilities that had those, and I made the unusual demand of, hey, let's not even put those on the network at all. You want to control it, and you want to control it remotely, let's do this. That DSL connection is $39 a month. It gets its own connection. It is completely separate from my network. Does not touch the network. And I had people go, well, that's just stupid. Why would you do that? And then I said, well, you know that tech that's logging into there? Do you really think, I'm trying to think of a company that rhymes with Rasmussen. I mean, a mechanical HVAC company in the state of Nebraska that might sound like Rasmussen. Do you think they really have separate logins for every one of their clients? Or do they have one login?
Perhaps you meant one of these 8.
Hush, Apple Watch. So, they didn't. And in fact, what they were doing was the standard login credentials that I could go out and go to Honeywell and say, hey, what's the login for that device? That they call them a Jace. I could get that. And as long as I could find that external IP address that it's pointed out to, I could log into it. My guess is there's hundreds and thousands of those still set up exactly the same way. So hopefully we started to open the eyes up of IT people and IT groups that, hey, these things need to be isolated. Now, the further side of that is, hopefully we've now emboldened those people to say to their CEOs, to their CFOs, we need to separate this crap. We need to put it out some way. Now, there are other ways to separate it, and that are probably just as good. At that point, I just wanted it completely out so I didn't have to worry about it. There are ways we can separate it, and it's hopefully safe, but even things like VLANs that are normally pretty safe, there's ways to jump VLANs, and there's all kinds of people that lay awake at night thinking about how to do bad stuff. So the more we can separate it, the better off. So back to our Target. The other thing that really disturbed me about Target was Target actually hired a company to look for intrusions called FireEye. FireEye's got a great product, and it went off. And it said, hey, something weird's going on here. And they got notifications, and guess what they did? Did they do anything about them? No. They basically made the decision that we knew our system's compromised, but damn it, it's almost Christmas, and we got to bring in this revenue. And we have to be able to think about that and go, this is stupid. Why would you have done that? Why would you have done that? So that's one of the things. Hopefully we've started making that turn where companies are starting to think in a bigger picture, not, hey, I need revenue this week, versus how do I deal with it? Now, the reality is, if they would have announced right before Christmas that, hey, our system's been breached and we're going to shut down Target for a week or days or whatever it would take to clean it out, patch it up, fix it, would they have lost revenue? Yeah. But they also, we wouldn't be talking about them still 3 years later as one of the bigger credit card schemes. But luckily, other people do even more stupid things like Equifax, right? How do I get that? And the companies hopefully start turning. And I think part of that has to do with the ethics of companies and how we start looking at it. Because when you start monetizing it and saying, you know what, it's cheaper for us to lose 140 million credit records than to stop sales for a day, I think we have a bit of an issue. Credit card issuers in the United States, well, you know, finally, most of you probably now have a little chip in your card, right? But how many places do you go to that they haven't bothered to activate that and you're still sliding it through a swipe? Casey's, for whatever reason. Are they a big enough company they can afford chip readers? Damn straight. Why are they not doing that? Why are they not verifying that? On the back of your cards, train customers to actually look at them. My card says, please ask for ID instead of the signature line.
Sometimes I use my dad's. My pizza, I go get the pizza for me whenever I want. I go, I have it too, whatever.
And they don't ever look. No, and I usually thank people, but I think it's that corporate culture we need to change. Check IDs. Think about how long it's taken for companies to finally say, we should probably ID everybody that looks like they're vaguely under 50 to buy alcohol and cigarettes, right? All right. No, when I was 18 in high school, this was a good thing. But it's not a great thing. Not that I would do that, of course. Statute of limitations is, of course, passed. How do we get that corporate culture? So what I would like you to do, and you do not have to do a YouTube video for this one. Hopefully that was interesting, getting to do the YouTube and the embedding. Now, I did notice one weird thing in Blackboard, and I got to see if we can figure out a way around it. Did anybody have the ability to blow up their YouTube video other than a tiny little block? Rachel's embedded hers a little differently. So maybe for us techie sides, so the original idea was that you could actually just embed this stuff really quickly and with a single button. And I'm not sure Blackboard achieved that. But there are other ways to embed it. But most of us don't want to mess with HTML and CSS on a regular basis when we're playing with Blackboard. Or do we? You guys might. Most people don't. So it's a way we can create some interaction back and forth and try to make it a little more engaging. Because I thought it was kind of neat to get to see the faces of some of our students. Now, I will say the online students, I forgot to warn them that we talk about some of these things in class, and then sometimes, because we have a really great discussion, I have you guys post in weird messages or something, and that you two seem to copy and paste like 400 times, because I did get a couple of people going, what in the world? Did I miss something in the assignment instructions? So I got to remember next year when I'm trying to do these kind of blended classes how to do that a little better. So IT security, I think from a standpoint of how do we fix it, it really is some culture change. Now, there's also some dollars associated with it, and some of you are working with small companies, but even little things like, well, I'm going to pick on you two, you're working with a business that doesn't even bother to put in a simple login, for God's sakes. So anybody walking in the door, hey, look at this computer, I can log in and change my utility bill. Because my guess is if they don't have passwords to log into the computer, they don't have passwords into the ERP software, or I think they use Power Manager. So if you just type in the name, the username, click, you're in. That would be my guess. So how do I start working on that culture? Small companies. How do I start trying to make an impression that, you know what, I know that it's great that you could go down to Walmart and buy a $49 router and now suddenly you have Wi-Fi access for the entire building. How do I build that in that that's not a safe thing to do for your business? The same business, you've got a QuickBooks login and maybe you have a point of sale terminal, but you know, everybody that walks in the door can get on your free Wi-Fi. That there are ways to do it, and that's not necessarily a way to do it. And that's sometimes a hard sell. Some people are already a little paranoid, and that's probably great, honestly, because there are some really, really scary things out there. But how do I change that culture? And I think it's up to you guys to start pushing those ideas in your companies. And I think every one of your companies, that idea of IT and security has probably come up at least once. How do I start dealing with that? How do I protect my equipment? How do I protect my data? And right now, most companies, what you own physically is a fraction of what that company is worth. Think about a company like Google. It's got some data centers, but the value of Google is not the data centers. It's that intellectual property. And if it gets stolen, somebody manages to steal it, what are we going to do? And we see that over and over again. All right, so for this week, for Wednesday, I'm going to have a printed out copy in here for those of you on campus, and I'm going to try to hopefully have by then, if I can find time between all these weird soccer practices, I'm going to hopefully have some video responses for everybody online, and that way you can proceed on with your next piece. And that is just kind of assembling it and putting it together into one master document that then you can tweak and turn for your clients. All right, any questions?
So did you want us to address the entire question to the discussion board, or is there a shortcut that you're okay with? Also, can like the man-in-the-middle attacks, can networks detect those? Or
There are ways to detect it. So the easiest way you can detect it in a network like this is actually through something called rogue access point detection. So this network that's out here knows which IP addresses are its own and can say, hey, even though it's got the same name, it's going to have some different information in it. And it can say, hey, I don't recognize that. And so one of the things I can do is I can actually attack this network. So by using some almost active defense mechanism, it can send out pings to it, essentially, and actually not allow anybody to connect to it. If it's a really smart network and you can see where that traffic is funneling, you could actually shut off that IP address on the laptop if you were really cogent about it. But that'd take a little more detective work. Most aren't going to have that in place. So, and the other thing about something like this attack is it's pretty fast moving. I'm not going to stay and just put this in place for weeks on end. It's going to be a pretty, and you want high traffic areas if you really want to pull a lot of data. So business conferences are a really great thing. You're sitting in somebody's, the Hilton Inn, and suddenly you've got the strongest Wi-Fi. Not saying that, like a Ramada Inn or somewhere where you're at a conference would be a really great thing to throw that out at some point. But that's a really great one. And so one of the things they do, so if you go to like any of the DEF CONs or any of the bigger security conferences, there's always hundreds of these devices and other ones even more sophisticated floating around, and people are doing it. And you'll see up on the board somebody will go, yeah, look, here's a dummy. They were at the, yeah. You're going to a security conference and you're dumb enough to sign into the Wi-Fi? So those kinds of things. So there's a lot of ways around it. Data, you can purchase enough data now. If you're traveling, do it off on your own phone or your own tablet. That way you know what it is. If you're traveling a lot for a business, they're probably going to set you with some VPNs and some other ways. So even if you connect through my device, it's going to be encrypted at that point through it. Now, not necessarily still the safest thing to do, but there's a lot of other things. So one of the ways that we get around it with a lot of corporations is we give them their own, for example, like a jetpack, so they can create their own Wi-Fi hotspot tied to that laptop. Or in the case of a lot of the newer ones, like the laptop I bring in here, I actually have a SIM card just like your phone, and it's got its own data plan on it. And that makes it kind of handy because I can use that laptop then virtually anywhere as long as I have Verizon signal. So not here in town in some cases, but actually it's not that bad now that we got the tower out by the cemetery. But so there are ways to detect it, and some of it is just looking at what's out there. If it looks suspicious, you know that, hey, I should be signed in and I should have to put in my landing page. So I didn't go through the stage, and I could create a fake landing page. It looks just like it does for GoBlue. The first time you log into GoBlue, you have that whole landing page where you say, yes, I want to log in and such. We can create fake ones of those. So it really is just kind of that smell test in some cases. No, I did not inform the college that I did that, but I did not hear anything back yet that they said. So whether they noticed or not, I don't know. I'm pretty sure they have rogue detection. Now, it was kind of interesting when this lab, when we had Wi-Fi in the lab that we controlled and they had Wi-Fi outside, at that point, the Wi-Fi on our campus was only 2.4 gig, and we ran 5 gig in here. So it was kind of pre-in-ish days. I would occasionally turn on the 2.4 and the rogue access points, and we would watch them battle it out. It was kind of interesting. I didn't tell them we ever did that either. But mine, in here, that network would detect, I think it would detect 6 or 7 of theirs and say, hey, those are rogue access points, and try to knock them down. And so we didn't really tell them we did that. But I would usually hear the next day, hey, the students had an issue with wireless. Really? I don't know what you're talking about. So now we lost that ability to play in that space. So we'll have to find other conferences and other things to go to do that. So one of the things I am doing is I am looking at some tools like this. I'm going to put in one of those C grants. Not that you guys are going to be here for the most part, but we have those education grants and things. And I'd like to put a whole toolkit of arsenal of tools together and then show up at some conferencey things and just see what we can. I probably won't put it in the C grant that we want to cause havoc, but at least see what kind of data and what we can experiment and what we can do. All right, so yes, I would like you to answer the entire question because I think this is probably where a lot of you are going to head. And for the cybersecurity class, I don't know, and I can post some of the same links in here. I just looked at cybersecurity jobs in the area. And it was kind of in a response to Dr. Goebel Lundholm. She said, you know, my brother works for Raytheon down in Arizona, and they can't find enough cybersecurity people, and they're willing to pay a fortune. And I said, okay. So if that interests you and all, contact Dr. Mary Goebel Lundholm. But we also looked at how many listings there were, and I think I ran 17 listings just doing a quick search here in the state. Everywhere from every public utility and power district is wanting cybersecurity people. If you happen to have security clearance because you've been in the military, every company that is a contractor at Offutt Air Force Base wants cybersecurity people, obviously. There are thousands and thousands of jobs in this area of IT security that are popping up every day. Everybody needs them. They're very well paid and well rewarded if you're willing to go out and do that. It does cover some damages. And I will say this, that there are some times when if you're the only IT security guy in a company and something happens, even though you told the owner that, you know, we need to have this firewall or this backup or this piece in place, sometimes the desk does come with blood gutters. So Rachel's like, ew, that didn't sound very... In other words, sometimes you might be the scapegoat. A couple years ago, I got approached by an electric company here in our state and actually wanted to hire me. And they were willing to pay really, really, really well. But it was fairly apparent when I talked to them that they weren't really willing to make a lot of changes. But I'd be responsible if anything went wrong. And I went, no, I kind of like what I do anyway. So look at that idea of security if you're looking for a job. And most of you hopefully are looking for jobs. Jobs are good. So you're already lined up? If we pay you enough, you'd change your mind. Not here. We don't pay. Actually, quite frankly, in our IT department, they actually do pretty well for the area. But what most of them do is they get enough skills here, and then we'll move on and double their salary in other locations. So we actually have the student who graduated 2 years ago from us is actually our IT security analyst or whatever for this college right now. And so I'm going to guess when he's got some more skills, some certificates and things, that he will probably move on and make us all feel very sad with what he's making for a salary. All right. So videos were interesting. So yay or nay on the videos in classes in the future? It wasn't that hard. So quite frankly, I hate the discussion boards as much as anybody else. We have to have them. Especially you guys are like, in the live section I don't, but in the online courses we are, and so it's a way we can hopefully blend. And I think the videos allow you guys to not necessarily talk directly to each other, but you can see some of your classmates, and hopefully it'll lead to a little more networking between the online and the on-campus. Because quite frankly, one of the things we don't talk enough about in college is that power of networking. How do you get your jobs and your careers based on those people you know? And I see that all the time. I went to a banquet last night, and the interactions in the sports medicine field was truly interesting. So my stepson, his grad assistantship, he pretty much got that where he's at from one of his preceptors or instructors in a lot of his stuff, who's back at UNL getting a graduate degree. So they kind of switched places, and then he can work through there. But all right, any questions, comments, thoughts? Why is he? I'd be afraid to touch Trey because you never know what's going to break on him, Captain. 7 knee surgeries, and I've never seen any other 21-year-old with like 17 knee surgeries, and you're a man beyond your years, both in intellect and body.
Oh, Grant,
Isn't it? I was trying. The only thing I'm curious about with the body of a 72-year-old, you've got the hairline of a 15-year-old. I just don't.
Thank you. I know. I'll take that one.
So you have hair. So.
I got that over twisted. And let's be honest, in 20 years, my body's falling apart. Hopefully, we got some robotic things to put it back together better than it was before.
We do. We are getting more and more body parts. 'Cause So like the Terminator. So there is future in that. All right, let me cancel the recording before it goes sadly.
Bye.